Welcome, everybody. I'm Larry Williams, the Director of CARMA, the Consortium for the Advancement of Research Methods and Analysis, now located in the Rawls College of Business at Texas Tech University. It is actually Thursday, April the 2nd, and we're delighted you have joined us for this CARMA Quick Chat in which we take the opportunity to chat with people who are going to be contributing. If you're new to CARMA, welcome. We are a university-based research methods education center that focuses on graduate students and faculty, and we have all kinds of programs to help meet the needs of that audience. We have a webcast lecture series program, but we also have online workshops and panels. And during the summer, in January and during the summer, we also offer live online short courses. You can find all the information you want and then some about CARMA at our website, karmattu.com. Today, we're here to chat with one of our upcoming webcast presenters. He will be giving a lecture next Friday, April the 10th, at 11 a.m. You can find information about how to access that on our website. The gentleman I am about to introduce is Steve Borgatti. Steve is the Gatton Chair and University Research Professor at the University of Kentucky. And I am extremely excited to be having this chat and also to welcome Steve back as a contributor to CARMA with his webcast lecture next Friday. Steve has participated with us in several different ways in the past, and it's always an exciting event that draws a lot of interest. Simply, one of the joys of me being CARMA director is the opportunities that I have to interact with so many really outstanding scholars and methodologists from the field of management and related areas. And I will say that in today's times and culture, sometimes I think that the term legend is overused, but in this case, that is no doubt that it applies to Steve Borgatti for the success and the accomplishments that he's had over his career. And so it's really an honor to be able to chat with him and an honor to be welcoming him back to give a lecture next week. So, Steve, it is good to see you, and we're very excited to be working with you again.
Great to see you.
All right, so one of the things that's noteworthy, at least the conclusion I've reached about Steve, is he kind of joined an emerging group of people just at the time that interest in networks and network analysis was exploding. We can see trends in different areas, historically, whether it was SEM or multi-level, even meta, certainly on the qualitative side. But to be able to chat with people who were there at the beginning that can kind of share their experiences as to what that was like and offer some perspectives on it, that's a real unique thing. So, Steve, um, tell us about how your interest in social networks emerged at that time.
Well, it was a network story, and it's pretty accidental. I started my PhD at UC Irvine in anthropology in 1978, and I was there for a couple of years. And then I heard about this job where I could apply my anthropological skills to marketing research and later management consulting. So I went and did that. And then when I came back, this guy who is the modern father of social network analysis, Lynn Freeman, had arrived. He had become dean and then just a professor. And he was like an absolutely incredibly charismatic person. And he just spread the network excitement
Hmm.
throughout the university. So suddenly even those of us who were not in sociology, because he was a sociologist, who weren't in anthropology, just sort of got caught up by it. And so I just did what everybody else was doing. And the truth is that the maths were kind of um, they matched. So I was a cognitive anthropologist, which meant that we would create these matrices that would be something like illness by illness, and the numbers would be the number of people who saw them as similar. And then we
Mhm.
try to understand what is the basis for similarity of these illnesses, like contagiousness, for example. People tend to group things by how contagious they are not contagious, or well, who gets them? Is it old people or is it young people? And so these item by item matrices, together with some attributes that describe these illnesses, are exactly what we use in network analysis. So it was kind of a very easy transition.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and so with the excitement of that time, and as it spread into the different related disciplines, sometimes that process is interesting in and of itself. And so I just wonder, as you reflect back on it, whether there were some particular challenges that network scholars faced at that time in the 80s and 90s as this new method kind of became more and more prevalent in organizational research.
Well, there were a lot of challenges, including one that's kind of embedded in your question. You used the word method just now, and for those of us in the field, we always bristle at that because while there is some distinctive methodology in networks, partly because there's distinctive data, we don't see it as primarily a method.
Hmm.
Probably we shouldn't have called it network analysis. It sounds like cluster analysis or something like
Hmm.
that. Um, so we see it as theoretical. And so we work to get it accepted as a theoretical point of view, as a research paradigm, and not as a method that you could just apply to anything.
Yeah.
So that actually, that was quite a bit of what was going on in the 80s and 90s in that way. Um, it Some other challenges were that, the field of networks is built just above the field of graph theory. There's a mathematical field called graph theory, and we're just a few inches above it. And the two developed together. So the main developer of modern graph theory was Frank Harari, and he came to all of our network meetings, and we co-developed. So that means there's a one-to-one relationship between our ideas and mathematical ideas in graph theory,
Hmm.
which means that it's very easy for us to formalize an idea. So if we think of some concept, it's easy for us to write it mathematically rather than in long paragraphs. And I think that this helped to confuse people into thinking that, well, that's method because it's got math in it. Um, Whereas I thought of it as kind of mathematical ethnography. We would take an idea in sociological culture, like that of a group, and say, okay, how do we formalize what that is? We have these notions of centrality. How do we formalize what centrality is? So so there's this element of things that we do that we think are theoretical, other people are looking at and saying, "Oh, that's method. That's centrality." And one of the problems with that is that let's take centrality. It's some measure of how important nodes are, but there's lots of different measures. Are they measures in the sense that they're all measuring the same thing, or are they actually different concepts that sort of broadly can be put into a family called centrality? So we would see hypotheses, particularly in management, that would say more central people will get promoted faster or something like that. And they would put the measure of centrality in the methods section, as would be common in other fields. But for us, those different methods were actually different theoretical concepts that
Hmm.
happened to be expressed mathematically, and so it got called measures and got thought of as being something secondary. It's just an operationalization of the real idea. But for us, the real idea was the mathematical expression.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things I was interested in, I want to talk about the role of software in that process
Mm.
in a minute. But what I found with chats with a lot of people who see themselves as methods people, with methods interests, that over the years there was really a strong relationship between their substantive interest and their methods interest, and that
Yeah.
sounds like that's exactly what happened with you as well.
Yeah, and more generally, I think to most of us in the field, but we see much more closely the relationship between those two, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so then to get to the software part,
Hmm.
as an area that deals with numbers and empirical data evolves, I think in every area software have come to play a dominant role in supporting that emergence, and that seems to be true for network analysis, and it seems like you were there from the beginning with it. And so can you share kind of a perspective that you have on how the software that's used in network analysis has evolved over the years?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Well, it's interesting because it had a big role in it. Um, because I think it was in 1980 around Christmas that IBM introduced the personal computer.
Hmm.
And when that happened, it meant that network people who had been working with mainframes but couldn't work on them themselves and had to go through the high priests that managed the mainframes really had a hard time getting their stuff programmed and done and circulated and so on. But once we had the machine on our desktops, we could write in BASIC the machinery that we needed to analyze networks. And suddenly, I think that caused an explosion of adoption of network analysis because you could do it now on your own machine. Um, since then, and then also one of the things that Lynn Freeman did was that he started collecting all the different programs that people were writing in Fortran and BASIC and so on, and he put them on together in a package of disks. What were they, 5 1/4 disks? And put them together and then mail them out to the community or make them available to community. That was great. And then, but all these had different inputs and outputs. They had different formats. So he centralized the inputs and formats and simply called the procedure that, say, Pat Dorian would write, so that everything had the same kind of input and same kind of output. And then I came along and I wrote a package called I forget what, NetPack, I think. And I was more programming oriented than the people who had been developing these programs. So it was at a higher level. And so Len said, why have competing programs? Why not put these all together? Let's call this UCINet 4. And
Mhm.
so the effect of that was that suddenly there was one package that standardized things for the field and standardized thinking too, because just the act of arranging the functions in a menu system teaches people, oh, so all of these things are kind of centrality, and all of these are
Mhm.
just a structure. It kind of forces a similar understanding of what we're doing. So I think that had a big impact. Um, and then other programs were developed over time. The big change was when R suddenly became popular,
Mhm.
and Carter Butts created SNA in R. Um, and that had an interesting impact because R runs on any platform, and whereas previous programs were limited to Windows or to whatever platform they were written for. So finally, it was universal. And you could manage your data at the same time as you were analyzing it. You could do, data transformations and so on. So I think that was a big boost, but at the same time created a certain kind of divide because there's just some people that are not going to do R, uh,
Yeah.
and they're going to want a program like SPSS that's menu driven and so on. So UCINet continued even though UCINet was something you had to pay for and R was free. Um, there was a need for both kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so,
Steve, in some areas, we can say that the software has become easier to use.
mhm.
And the critics would say, and that leads to people using it that don't know what they're doing. right?
Yes.
So, there would be, particularly in my area in SEM, there would people who say that's definitely happened. Do you think that's true? There's any, does that occur in the network analysis area?
Yeah, but in a more complicated way. So R makes it possible to do all kinds of analyses that you couldn't have done yourself. But it's complicated enough, and many of us are not very literate in our that begin to just sort of take it on faith. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, this really complicated sequence of steps that I just got off the internet that I will do, but I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm not
Hmm.
following that. And actually, the menu system might be a little bit, in some ways, while it's very easy, you just press a button and something comes out, it's more informative. It's like R is built to give you sort of a mathematical result. It's not meant to give you a report, a
Hmm.
description of what's going on, whereas the menu systems were more like that. So I think it has both kinds of effects. I see today much more misuse of network concepts, network measures than I did in the past.
Hmm.
And I think that that's partly because you're already lost in our why bother to try and understand any of this stuff? Just
Yeah,
give me the answer.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, Steve, one of the things I talked about your presence and your stature within our community, and that's well earned by a long career of sustained productivity. And that's not something that's easy to accomplish.
Hmm.
For somebody to stay so productive and so engaged over such a period of time. And so I'm just wondering, as you reflect on what you've done with your career and how you've been able to do that, are there personal characteristics that you have that supported that? Are there particular work habits, that you follow? Just how is it that you've been able to do so well for so long?
Hmm. That's a very difficult question to answer. I think a lot of it comes from my advisor, Lynn Freeman, who was an idea person and not a detail person.
Mhm.
So he really liked big ideas and was playful with them. And he was playful with his graduate students that way. And I continue to have that playful attitude. And that makes work easy. It's not like, I have to go to my job now and do something boring. And one thing that you'll probably hate, but Lynn told all of his students, no student of mine will read mainstream journal articles because they will just rot your mind. Um, and so we did not get exposed to a cutter culture
Mhm.
where here's how you do a paper and you cook, you just churn them out in a certain formula, which has got to become demoralizing and boring,
Mhm.
especially as journalists today are much more bureaucratic. And just to submit a paper, you practically need a graduate student co-author to handle all that crap.
Indeed.
And so I think the mentality of staying pure to the ideas and not worrying about um, things like tenure and publishing in the top journals and stuff like that, I think made it easier to remain interested.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've done it well, and that's the main reason we're excited to have you giving your webcast lecture next Friday. So I'd like to close by asking you to give us a preview of what you're going to be talking about.
Well, I'm kind of drawing on my anthropological roots to analyze a little bit some of the belief systems that I see emerging in the community that does network analysis. I see increasing, how do I put it? Increasing interest in adopting the most complicated methods possible and in
Hmm.
referring to one's own work. Like people don't say that they study networks anymore. They study complex networks. They want to make it complicated. And as a result, they make some mistakes in interpreting things, make some mistakes in how they view what models are doing. And so my goal is to present an analysis of some of the mistakes that people are being made, that are people are making in thinking about their network studies.
Yeah. Well, we will very much look forward to it. Steve Rigotti giving a webcast lecture for Karma next Friday, April the 10th, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We certainly hope you can join us, and you can find out how to do that on the Karma website. Steve, thanks so much for taking some time to chat with us. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay, sounds great.